Hello everyone. I want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of strategies and how you should start for your squares on your portrait project. So making sure first of all that the logistics are handled, that you have printed out your 5 by 7.5 black and white photo. Make sure it's black and white, no color. Black and white because we want to transition these to value. Making sure that it's a nice high contrast image, right? And cropped as close to the face as you can get. This is Sylvia Earle. She's a hero of mine. She's like the Jane Goodall of the sea. And I have used my artist tape on both my photo and my Bristol paper. And my columns are lettered in both, right? And my numbers go down the rows in both. I've also used pencil, yeah, to create my grids on both. That's it. Now say goodbye to your pencil. Everything from here on out is in pen. Okay, there will be no tracing, no drawing of a whole face, none of that. Yeah, in fact, I encourage you to create yourself a viewfinder. Just find a piece of cardstock or something, junk mail, whatever, and cut out a 1/2 inch square, yeah, so that you could isolate different aspects of the face without worrying about what they are in connection to the whole. Okay, that's why we're working with the grid process to deconstruct, right, so that you can work piece by piece. And remember, we're working on creating 150 small images, right? So please try to disassociate from the whole and work specifically on the part that you're focused on. Okay, so she is an ocean activist. She's gone the deepest of any woman alive, and she is deeply involved with a lot of ocean work and activism. So my themes and my ideas that I think I'm going to be working with right now are going to be related to that. So in using a viewfinder, what's great about it is it will break down, and you can also put little notches, yeah, at halfway points. That breaks it down to even smaller parts if you need it. Yeah, and what the language that I used in class, hopefully, was looking for transitions in value that have two different types that we're looking for. We're looking for harsh or sharp or quick transitions in value, where it goes from one value to the next pretty dramatically on an edge or a line, like her hair and the water, or her chin and her wetsuit. Yes? Soft transitions would be areas where the value slowly changes, like on the temple of the face, right? Where it slowly goes from shadow to lighter mass into highlight along the center, right? Those are soft or subtle or slow transitions in value, right? Some places it happens all at once, and we want to save those areas for last. Those are the features of the face, right? In the nose, for example, we have both soft and harsh transitions in value. Harsh transitions in the shadow to highlight reach, they're so close together, right? And yet the side of that nose slopes away from us in a very slow gradient, from shiny highlight to slowly transitioning into a lighter value. So those subtle transitions often are a little harder to describe in all of our various patterns. So we're going to take our time getting to that. So we're going to start with some of the harsher transitions. And remember, I've asked you to work randomly, yeah? So here I have I3, yeah, where this is a harsh transition in value. I also have an example of more softer transitions in G3, same row, 2 over, right? I'm trying to capture the subtlety of the part line with some highlights of her wet hair, right? And using a bubbly pattern versus a ripple. Then I came down into 4F and did some in her hairline where I'm using just a vertical kind of raindrop pattern to transition the value of her hair to that soft transition in value to her forehead. Yes? Okay, so now in looking at what I can do as a demo with us together, I'm thinking I want to work up in here, up in her hairline, and I'm going to do 2C. So I'm going to move my viewfinder over 2C. I'm going to check and make sure it's accurate. 2, yeah, baby C, great. So I am going to make sure that this is in my line of sight, that I can easily reference this as I come up into 2C and create my reference points. So reference points are how you change and enlarge this information into a larger space, which are the same scale, right? So her hair interacts with that harsh value transition on a very precise point. It's right here. It's not exactly the corner. It's not exactly halfway through the grid. It's actually about a fourth. So I'm going to plant my first reference point as a small dot right there in pen, okay? Pointillism or stippling is going to be the way that you will kind of map out where your value goes, where it interacts, where the changes, dramatic changes are. We have some games happening outside. So I'm just creating a general path of where I believe these lines will go. I'm not going to put them too close together. And then where does it interact with the opposite side of my square? Another edge is a corner right here, not exactly half, just barely above the halfway point, right about there. Okay? So generally, that is where my dramatic value shift will happen. Now I want to think about what exactly do I want to, what do I want to use for my texture. And I've been thinking about her work, and she does a lot of work with seaweed, and so I thought it would be really fun to kind of just play around with some seaweed. So I have some of that just referenced that I've been looking at. And so, and knowing that this area is dark, there's also kind of a highlighted area here. Notice the subtle differences, right? There's a little highlighted spot, so I'm going to make sure that that spot stays what it should be. And the rest, I'm going to try to create a seaweed pattern. And as it transitions out, it will get much darker, but as it transitions into her hair, it will dramatically increase in its darkness. Great. So I have one blade of seaweed that I've started on, and I'm going to continue just by adding more value around this and to build up the textures of what seaweed might look like. And then I'm going to stop shy right on the line. Yeah, I'm not going to go past it into the next frame. So I'm going to come over here, finish off this area, and see how I could continue to connect it out into some of the darker and lighter parts of the background of the water that's behind her head. Good. And now there's a little bit of a fuzz that's kind of happening. So as I come across, I'm gonna maybe darken some parts of that seaweed so that that edge doesn't feel so dramatic. Okay, so I now have something that's kind of organic, like watery seaweed, that is describing this kind of harsh transition in value. If I look in the background, there is a little bit of value happening up in here too, so I might just repeat my subtle little seaweed blade and bulb. And then I can always come in and darken if needed, or if my visuals aren't feeling clear. Kind of like how abstract this is, but I do think that having, something that references plant life, flowing sort of is what I'm after there. Great, so I wanted to make sure that I captured, I'm gonna bring this in close, I wanted to make sure I captured those subtleties in value that are happening in here. There's a little highlight. There's areas that are darker. There's this fuzz. There's a little bit of a darker value. It's not all white. So I might even be adapting this later and returning to this square depending on how I handle the value in each of these other squares here, right? So another area that I might go to do an example of a soft transition in value, I'm thinking we can go into, let's do her, let's do her temple. Let's do 6C. Let's stay in the same column and come down to 6. And I will place this right here. So this is her temple as it transitions from forehead into some slight shadow mass into her hairline in the top corner. Yeah, I'm just gonna make sure that's accurate again by checking. I'm in 6 and I'm 1, 2, 3 over. Okay, 6, A, B, C. Great. Okay, so I'm just trying to block out what's right next to it so that I'm just not distracted at all. So this is my square of focus, taking it from here. And I'm going to be thinking again about a texture that's relevant to her and her work. Again, she does a lot of work with water and submarines. I'm thinking maybe like a periscope sort of idea would be fun. Thinking about how to translate that into these values. They made me look at this from this point of view as a periscope possibly coming up in here. Okay, so I'm going to lay it out. What I'm looking at here are, where are these areas, these darker masses, this temple vein that she has, right? Where we transition from forehead to temple and side of forehead just as we get to the, and also a hairline in the top corner. So indicating where those are going to be placed. And that it comes down all the way to that halfway point, right? Is a vague line of darkest values. Okay, so now I know that that's where my darkest values are, that I'm going to be working from generally light gray to maybe a medium value gray, yes, into the temple area. But it's not all the same. It gets specifically darker right along that line. So let me think about different ways I might create some variation and still try to use my idea of possibly a periscope. So in water. So I'm thinking about maybe creating an imaginary water line. Excuse me. Sorry. An imaginary water line. That way this periscope can be looking that way. So now that I think I have that outlined, what would be, oh, and the water is going to continue here, but get farther apart. So in thinking about how to go from a darker value here to a very light, I'm just thinking about ripples of water and how I could dissect that and break that apart as I go. And on the other side of this periscope, it'll be slightly darker, but that periscope will get created kind of in the negative space, like I'm not drawing a line around it per se. So avoid outlining things, I think, is probably my biggest note to everyone. Avoid outline, look for ways that you could incorporate your person's work as well as their, as well as their essence, right? What are the ways, the things that you think are important? Especially when some of you are choosing some really, famous figures. There's all going to be many different associations that we all have. So make sure that you're really pulling from a wide range of them so that you can reach as many audience members as possible, yeah? So in looking at this periscope, I'm not too sure if it will read correctly, but hey, it was worth a try. I'm thinking there, right in here, she needed some more. If I'm looking at this little vein, I want to kind of shade off to the side of that. Great, and keep this all in mid-value. All right, so in looking at how I can now relate this to those around it, and be sure that you are generally looking around for areas of harsh transition and soft transition, and ways that you can use your various textures to achieve that. Once you finish 25, I want you to do a video for me, okay? And answer the questions that are on the prompt. Okay, good luck to you all, and make a viewfinder if you're stuck. Yeah, it's really helpful. Okay, let me know if you have questions.